Have you ever wondered how a SaaS company is making its money or how it's structured? In this video, I will have a look at how that SaaS business operates and is designed using the business model canvas. Business models differ greatly across industries and across types of businesses. For example, think about the difference between manufacturing, service industries or reselling. The way value is created and the way it's organized differs greatly. A great tool to facilitate discussions on that is a tool called the Business Model Canvas, and it's very popular in startup circles and similar areas. This shows the main components of a business in relation to each other. It kind of resembles a supply chain going from left to right, but there's also a couple of other components in there. I won't go into this business model canvas in a lot of detail right now. I'll just explain it as we go and explain the SaaS business model. You'll see some references on the page later, down below. Now, how does a sample business look like? I'm taking a sample business here, but you can apply this yourself to other types of businesses. First and foremost, every business has a value proposition. And in the case of a SaaS business, it is delivering online software. And in our example, I'm talking about, so let's say, easily accessible software, improving business productivity and collaboration, like some kind of workflow or what have you. Now, the next important thing, obviously, typically, is the customer segment. For example, I'm targeting business users, such as accountants in this particular case. Now, how do we deliver that software to those accountants? That is the purpose of the channel. And the interesting thing about SaaS is that it's kind of like a direct model. You connect directly with your customers and not through some kind of reseller, although you could if you wish. So in the channel area here, I've listed self-service, which is pretty characteristic of cloud, potentially API when you connect it up to other software. And then as alternatives, you could talk about using this through app stores or brokers, although we don't see that as a being very popular option these days. Now, for ongoing understanding of what your customer is doing, you need customer relationships. And for that, again, cloud and software as a service is a bit peculiar because you have online insight into what these people are doing. And since you have an online service, you can also, you're also typically giving online support. I mean, you can really follow on a click-by-click basis what your users are doing with your software. Now, what a lot of SaaS companies also do is have customer conferences where people come together and they share results and exchange, experiences. And that's a great way to understand what your customers are doing. But you don't really have to do that. Now, how do you get to that value proposition? How do you make money off of that value proposition? Now, those are the revenue streams down below. Again, typical or even essentially characteristic of cloud is the fact that you have some kind of usage-based billing. So you don't buy licenses, you just buy the right for a specific user to use that. So it is a license to some extent, but it's very on demand. You could also charge by the transaction or any combination of that or any other thing that you find in a creative way. But charging by the number of users is by far the most common in a SaaS world. How do you get to that value proposition? Obviously, you will have to develop software, and that is your key activity. To develop software that meets the needs of the customers in the segments that you're targeting, bringing out the value in your value propositions. This is where your Agile and Scrum and DevOps activities go. Now, other than software development, you have to maintain the platform on which you develop the software, and in particular the DevOps pipeline. So that is a significant activity in and of itself. Who's doing that? Well, and what are the assets that your company has to it? Obviously, the code base is probably one of your most important assets, but your developers who are expanding that code base are also a key resource. Without those, your company is basically dead. How do you work with other partners? And no company is big enough to do everything themselves, and in particular a software company needs to be fairly lean and not get distracted by stuff like running servers. I mean, you could do it, but it distracts from your main core business. So your average SaaS company is running on Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, or what have you, and some are running it on other hosting companies, but again, that means that you're doing more yourself and you're sort of distracted from your core business. Another important component, although you might find it hard to call it a specific partner, is the open source community. Your average SaaS company uses a ton of open source, if only for your development environments, your programming languages, your operating systems, and the list goes on and on. And you need to maintain the relationships with that community one way or another. Finally, there's a cost structure associated to this, obviously, and this derives from your key activities and resources and key partners. You need people. Your developers are a cost, and the people that run your software are a cost, and the people that sell your core software are a cost. On top of that, you need to maintain the DevOps pipeline that is so essential to you. And you will incur cost on the partners that you work with, like the infrastructure providers. I mean, there's a great example. There are a couple of great examples out there if you dive into the blogosphere to find some numbers on that. A couple of interesting comments together is that there's a great discussion, a great disparity between the cost structure and the revenue stream. The cost is really way ahead of the revenue, and that makes it a pretty peculiar business. And if you would stop developing your software, then your revenue would carry on for a while. So kind of interesting. In summary, this shows that a software as a service company is part of a larger cloud supply chain because it has upstream providers for infrastructure and platform. And the other thing is the big divergence between revenue and cost structure. Now, if you dive deeper into this business model canvas, there's a ton of more things that you can say about it, but I want to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. My name is Peter van Eyck. Please like the video and reply to it with your thoughts.